Hello and welcome back to the Vintage Super League. We are about to watch a battle of two Xerox decks. I'm still Rich Shea unless someone's tricked me very, very badly for a very long time, and I'm joined by Cyrus Corman Gill. How are you doing, Cyrus?
I'm doing great. I just beat a Hall of Famer, so I guess I can cross that one off the old bucket list. I didn't even get a pin like you do in paper, but it was I had some very strong hands. One thing I'd like to know, I did realize that I missed lethal. I passed the turn, and I was just I have a problem with tunnel vision. Is one of my problems as a storm player, and I was confounded when Rich or
When
everything
Bob.
obviously gives me a kill, and I just did. I just was like, all right, I'm just gonna do what I did because thinking about it, I was thinking about A through Y and ignored Z, which was the lethal there.
I think, like I said earlier, it's so easy for someone watching one of these games to be like, well, I obviously would have made this play and it would have been better, etc. But when you're caught up in the heat of the moment, it's so hard to see everything. Part of the thing about being a spectator is that you're relaxed, you're calm, and when you're calm, you observe more, you see more, and when you're ironically stressed about playing, I think it actually makes you a worse player. So I think
Yes,
it's easy for spectators to see things that in the moment it's just hard to see.
I can strongly relate to that, having sat 5 feet away from the beautiful volcanic island painting,
Oh,
missing lethal game three of the finals with everyone watching me. And that's what makes Magic great, though, is it's like if we could just make the perfect play every time, how boring would that be? But I mean, I've played Dark Ritual, I've cast thousands of Dark Rituals, and I cast it wrong that game. How great is that? That I wasn't able to find the easy Dark Ritual tutor Tendrils of Agony. Like that's the most straightforward line. It just what a great game and a great format.
you're so right, Cyrus. If we were playing something that were, I don't know, here, add these two one-digit numbers, it'd be really boring because it's anything, it would be easy. No, this is fun because it's not easy. And
Magic
that
is the hardest game, and it's the most interesting strategy game I've ever played.
right, it's interesting, and I think that's the right word for it. You can make an arbitrarily hard game. Here, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 1,000. What number is it? It's not
Yeah,
187. That doesn't matter. But that's a hard game. That doesn't mean it's an interesting game. It's a terrible game. It's a boring game. This is an interesting game, and it's a hard game. And
and the
that's why
flavor and the beautiful cards and the beautiful people that you get to meet playing it. What a and this is the oldest and greatest format. I mean, I was noting. I think that 27 of the 75 cards I'm playing in my deck tonight are older than I am. How how great is that?
I think that's spectacular. And I think you're absolutely right that ultimately it's the human beings, it's the humans that actually make this game really good. I've met some of my closest, dearest, and oldest friends by playing Magic. I've been the best man at two weddings, thanks to Magic the Gathering. And I can absolutely say that the relationships that I've formed with people, thanks to this game, have just been life altering in amazingly good ways.
Yep. All right, looks like we're ready to go.
All right.
All right, so looking at these opening hands,
That skull clamp.
yeah, what a spicy one of the pyromancers and stuff. I know Rachel Agnes had played it previously, and that was the first time I saw it. So it looks like Andreas sent back his first hand, but oh man, here he has a Library of Alexandria. He
This
just
is
tried
pretty.
an ancestral recall to the top.
Oh man, yeah. So
But here,
I know that Randy earlier said that he doesn't like the Library of Alexandria, but this is why I always put it in these style decks because if you're playing against another kind of slow deck, then you can just grind your opponent into dust with it.
yeah, and I suspect that Andreas will not cast ancestral recall, nor will he play a land on turn two. And yeah, I've heard a lot of hate about Library of Alexandria, and people say, well, it's a trap card. You keep marginal hands because of it. Here's the thing: it's a spell land. At worst, it taps for 1 mana against the Sphere of Resistance deck, which is 25% of the meta. At best, it's Leyline of win the game, and you just have to be responsible enough to go off of Leyline when you need to. If you just stay on Leyline forever, sure, you're going to lose. If you don't play your lands when you should, sure, you're gonna lose. But if you play it and you just think of it as being sometimes a colorless land, sometimes it just wins the game, it should be in every deck, basically. Not shots, obviously. But
Right. It should be. I mean, I play in all of my blue decks. Like, look at Bob's hand. Bob's hand is great. It's going to eat things for breakfast. Except Andreas has this tremendous threat on the board. It's this enormous threat that Bob never could have forced. He can't rev it. He can't mental misstep it. It's just there. And he does have a wasteland and a strip mine in his main, but he doesn't have them in hand.
and it's just going to run away with the game. I mean, it's one-sided Howling Mine, and Xerox is all about the card advantage. And so often it's all about Ancestral Recall, and you use Mental Misstep to fight over your Ancestral Recalls, and that's what it's really about. It's not about how you win the game. It's just about the Xerox and drawing as many cards as you can. And Library of Alexandria draws a lot of cards.
Oh, it sure does. It sure does. So I think, Andreas he's gotten the keys, put them in the ignition, he's turned. And if he can sort of just ride this truck to victory, he has a plan now.
And that young Pyromancer could maybe get out of control, but here's the thing. He also has 2 creatures in his hand. And you look at it, it's like he has an Ancestral Recall, so once he grinds his opponent out, he's going to Ancestral into Dig Through Time, and Mentor, and Managorger Hydra, and he's just going to run out this game. But if Bob finds a Wasteland next turn, and then can play Pyromancer, Wasteland the turn after that, then he might be able to take this away with the Daze.
Well, that's Bob's hope, is to find a Wasteland. Now, here Andreas has an interesting call. He can pass the turn, draw, or he can draw and then cantrip. I like it.
Deciding to draw then cantrip.
Using land drops is such an unpleasant experience.
I agree. I think it's, especially since you're playing Moxen, you're just fairly likely to hit a mana source off what would be effectively 4 looks here, unless Bob decides to fight over the Preordain, which he does. I think that's a fine call, because he does not know that Andreas has an Ancestral, because he scryed it to top, and then Bob probed and was still on top of the library.
Right, and if Andreas finds another blue source so he can defend it with Flusterstorm.
Oh yeah, that'll be great, because Flusterstorm is not counterable. So Bob would have to double counter the misstep, or the Ancestral, obviously.
Find land, does he?
Uh-oh. So both players are missing on land drops, but one of them has a Library of Alexandria.
Right, exactly. So here, Andreas draws a card on upkeep so that he doesn't go to 7 and become unable to draw. Well, that's a great draw.
That was a very good play. Yeah, I think he's going to like to play the Soul Ring here, which I imagine will get misstepped.
So far, both players are basically trading spells, except Andreas has drawn 3 more cards than Bob.
Notably, both players' hands are fairly weak here, but Andreas moving to discard here. You don't want to draw all these 3-drop win conditions that you have, which is one of the downsides of the Managorger Hydras, is they're very clunky, and when you already have one, you really don't want the second one.
Yeah, I agree. If those were nimble mongies, Andreas could have slipped them right in. He almost was partial.
The goose could indeed be loose.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ooh, there's a magic card.
Wow. So it looks like Bob is going to be able to... I think you probably wait a turn on casting anything, right? Because then you could...
I think Daze means he goes for it now. Can you imagine how good dazing back your land would be?
Yeah, you get to daze back. Wow. And you have Pyroblast back, yeah. I like this play. I was just thinking he might want the blue for the play of Lotus Dig next turn, but I think he feels he needs to be the aggressor. He needs to be the beatdown, because if the game goes long, it doesn't matter if he has a Dig through time. He's going to cast the Dig.
So this makes sense. He can find the land, or if Andreas counters, he doesn't need to find land. He has a land.
How interesting! Yeah, that's a good play from the Hall of Famer. He decides that if his opponent's going to fight over this, it'll take him off library, and he'll get to blow him out with Daze, and then play a land anyways. So yeah, this makes a lot of sense.
It really does. Oh, and he can find a Wasteland. That seems huge.
And then it lets him possibly double spell this turn, which is, if you want to beat Library of Alexandria, you need to be the aggressor. You need to have a high tempo. Because obviously Andreas is doing nothing right now except for drawing cards. And as much as we all love to draw cards, we know that doesn't actually win games of Magic unless you have a Laboratory Maniac in play.
Do you think it's a little... I don't know. I wasn't expecting Andreas to discard the Monastery Mentor there. I would
Yeah,
have
I think Managorger Hydra is less powerful than the Mentor, but maybe Andreas has the green land already.
It is, but he's going to need more lands before he can deploy it. And even if you go on the take that sometimes Hydra's better and sometimes Mentor's better, if you leave yourself the variety sampler, you can throw out whichever's better for the scenario.
Exactly. So Hydra can trample over the Young Pyromancer tokens, which is a huge factor in this matchup, whereas Young or Monastery Mentor can just make tokens that can block favorably if you have a spell on their turn. Because one way that Bob runs away with this game is getting Young Pyromancer Skull Clamp online, and that will beat Library of Alexandria.
That will. That will. I love how blatantly, absurdly greedy that combo is, right? Like, this deck is so low to the ground, and then there's this combo that's just, yeah, I've cast so many spells, I have so many tokens, I'm going to turn them into some cards, too.
So he found the land and an Ancestral. Wow. So Bob is right back in this game.
He is.
I had an interesting idea today driving home from work, excited for the Vintage Super League, thinking about the deck list I'd be facing off against, and I thought about Skull Clamp. And then I thought about a card I've been playing in Modern recently, which is Psy Master Thopterist.
Oh, yeah, that sounds great.
And I was just thinking, you cast the Skull Clamp, you get a Thopter, you get to eat, and then if you have some sort of paradoxical outcome, and you can maybe be a Jeskai deck with Stoneforge. So Andres is going to take himself off Library of Alexandria here.
The trap.
And he's going to get dazed. Oh, this is so terrible. This game is suddenly very far ahead. So Bob would like to do Ancestral rather than play the Pyromancer there, which is interesting.
I don't think I would have forced the Ancestral because, I don't know, I like having Library.
Yeah, I think that you play on Library and hope to Ancestral Fluster back up next turn. Is what I would have done. But we also know the context of Bob's hands. So
that's true.
And there's a Treasure Cruise. I think that Bob is ahead here.
Oh, I think he is.
He's very ahead. And something about Vintage is that people are is that you sometimes think about how it's a swingy format with all these powerful cards, and it is. But all these early decisions in the beginning of the game and the mid game set you up for these cascading restricted cards. So you saw there that Bob was able to go dig through time, and then he baited his opponent with Ancestral, was able to Ancestral into Cruise, and suddenly he's drawn 3 restricted cards, and his opponent is so far down on cards.
Right. So I feel like Andreas just has to shift the turn here.
I agree. Well, yeah, you can't afford to cast Ancestral Recard against an opponent with 7 cards in hand and red mana open. Or was the red mana was open? I believe
he does have red mana open. Yeah, I think it's just too risky.
Oh. So now he's going to be able to deploy a Young Pyromancer, which he discarded 1 to hand size, which I think is fair. Is that what happened, or?
Yeah, he discarded 1 to hand size. So
I maybe value a land less than a Pyromancer, but
well, at this point, certainly, I don't think he needs that many lands. So I actually like Ancestral here from Andreas.
I agree.
I like that play. If it works, then, I always just like to get my Ancestrals out there before Young Pyromancer arrives, because if you do it later, Young Pyromancer brings all these friends, and it goes really badly.
I agree. Young Pyromancer, a card that has kind of fallen off a little bit in Vintage. It was the printing of Walking Ballista, which is an exciting newish card from Aether Vault, I believe, really made that card pretty ineffective. But, Matt Sperling, fellow Vintage Super League competitor, brought it back this year at Vintage Champs, going 802 in the Swiss and losing to a powerful wizard in the top 8, I believe.
Well, his deck was absolutely brilliant. I was testing the matchup. Some friends of mine were testing the matchup, and it was really not favorable. Wow, what is favorable is that Lightning Bolt, though.
Wow, Lightning Bolt off the top to oh, and that's such an interesting interaction with Managorger Hydra, as it gets to get a little bit bigger, almost like Tarmogoyf when there's no instance in the graveyard yet. But it's not going to be big enough to defeat this Lightning Bolt.
Right. Oh, man, that was exciting. And now Bob can get on a boat.
Wow, Bob has just navigated this game, so perfectly. And he's going to go ahead and fetch because he's about to draw 3 cards here, and he doesn't want another land.
Bob is reminding everyone why he's called the Great One. This is some absolutely amazing play.
Yeah, Bob is really, impressed me with his play tonight.
Absolutely.
He just happened to fall by the wayside of a few evil wizards with their powerful black spells. Wow, so now Bob has Pyroblast, Mental Misstep. He gets to DAC next turn, take that Mox. And Andreas is on 4 cards in hand. He's not going to have another Mana Source next turn. And these Skull Clamp is about to draw it's going to be drawing 1,000,000 cards.
Yeah, this looks really good for Bob. I think Andreas' best hope is to get down a land, play and defend a Managorger Hydra, It's not looking good for him. If he doesn't hit a land, he's sort of stuck on the Hydra Go plan, which hasn't worked in the movies. I don't think it worked very well against Hercules, and might not work for Andreas either.
Yeah, I don't think that. I mean, I think normally, Mana Gorgia Hydra has a good chance, I think, of beating a singleton Young Pyromancer a certain percentage of the time because it's so large. But that Skull Clamp is going to mean that Bob effectively has unlimited spells to cast.
Man, I don't know. If I were Bob, I'd be sitting there thinking how fun it's going to be to draw to. Yeah, wow.
And Skull Clamp is not a restricted card, is it?
Skull Clamp is not restricted. No. Andreas goes for the really high variance play. He could have played and defended a Sylvan Library, but I think he's so far down at this point that he's going to take to heart that adage from Virgil's Aeneid. To the vanquished, the one hope for salvation lies in abandoning the hope for salvation.
Yes, and we'll see how this goes. Bob does have 8 cards in hand, and you make a great point there that Andreas took the higher variance play. And when you're behind in a game of Magic, you just have to cross your fingers sometimes, hope it's good enough, and you can't afford to be dirling around drawing extra cards. We saw how that worked before with the Sylvan Library or the Library of Alexandria. Now there's another library involved. It turns out Andreas is a well-read man. He has many libraries at his disposal.
He has. He has. Unfortunately, I don't think Andreas made any mistakes. I mean, I just think he needed to draw some land earlier than he did.
And this is a great attack by Bob. Some people might say, "Oh, I'm not going to attack my permanent, so I don't want to lose it." But he has another one, so why not attack with it? And I think that's actually a fairly tempting block from Andreas' side because there's already been a young Pyromancer that hit the graveyard. But then you have to think, well, why would he attack for this if he didn't have another one? And you get in this weird back and forth, and it ends up with you being ahead 2 points of damage.
I think if Andreas blocks, he's just dead. He's so far behind that he really has to try to strap a saddle on this Hydra and ride it to victory.
Yeah, and this Hydra might be able to do that. I mean, I haven't really seen this card in action except for when I put about 10 counters on it. But I was going to lose that game anyways because Necropotence took all of my life and it did not trade it for the power I was promised.
Oh man, you got a bad deal.
All right, so Bob made the play I thought he might make, which is play Dax, steal your Mux, hold up Pyroblast, double misstep, and there's just not very many ways they get back in this game. I mean, you could tap out full Sylvan Library, which you will, and then kill the DAC.
I think so. I think he kind of has to, right? I mean, attacking for 3 is probably not going to increase his clock significantly, and the only way he wins is if Bob is sort of out of gas, though that's not really possible because Bob can draw 4 more cards with what's available.
Yeah, I mean, what a great game, though. I think multiple times I've thought that one player was just completely running away with the game, and then there's a few powerful Magic cards later, and suddenly it feels like it might be close. Like this Mana Gorgia Hydra is already a 3/3, and Bob isn't going to have favorable attack, so now he's in the position of drawing all the cards in the world. What are you going to do? So
you're right. I mean, we're seeing 2 great players play 2 really, really good decks against one another. This is everything I've been hoping for from another season of the Vintage Super League.
Yeah, what an exciting way to start off the night. I mean, I would have never put you on Dredge. You're on Dredge, and I was just remarking. We got to see, we got to see a black card cast off of a Lotus from a Teamer deck. We got to see, turn 1 3 hollow ones. We got to see Necropotence miss from 17 life, and now we're getting to see Mana Gorgia Hydra facing off against Young Pyromancer. And surrounded by powerful Magic cards like Ancestral Recall and Black Lotus.
These are some dual decks, right? We have Mana Gorgia Hydra versus Young Pyromancer. Earlier we had Blightsteel Colossus versus Hollow One and his friend Hollow One, and also other Hollow One for some reason.
And they were all hanging out at the Bazaar from Baghdad.
Exactly.
Bazaar of Baghdad. So now let's see. So Bob is going to need to get the other Pyromancer online because he has to race this Mana Gorgia Hydra. And if Andreas is able to find a land, he's going to... Because the thing about this point is Andreas doesn't necessarily care too much of his spells resolve because his opponent will be adding a counter to Mana Gorgia Hydra then too.
I agree.
But then that's going to produce 2 tokens. So who's going to win this race? I think it still favors Bob, but it's going to be close.
Favors Bob. It definitely favors Bob. I think that Andreas really needed to find a second blue source earlier.
Oh man, he clicked on a blue source here, and that's just so bad for him. He can't really afford to pay 4 life facing down 2 young Paramancers, especially
Yeah.
since Bob has another Lightning Bolt left in his deck. Notably, I think he discarded one already.
This is just awful for yeah. So I know we've talked about Xerox trading mana sources for cantrips. This is the frustrating side of it. Sometimes you just don't get your mana sources. Sometimes you just choke to death on your cantrips.
Yeah, and I mean, we really talked up Library of Alexandria this game, and look at it now. If only it could be a basic island. Sometimes all the cards in the world doesn't matter when all you need is some blue mana.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah, so Bob just, he has more counter spells than he knows what to do with. He has almost as many counter spells as Andreas even has in hand. So I think he's pretty happy to snap off a counter spell here, get 2 tokens, and just shut off any line that Andreas has to win the game. And notably, Andreas needs this pre-drained resolve because he's effectively Sylvan Library locked. He needs to find a blue source, and he can't afford to not have it resolve.
You're absolutely right. Oh man, this is. I think Bob's going to get this.
Yeah, I really thought turn 1 library, notably on the play, Moldus 6 library is not as powerful, but I really thought there was no chance. And I guess maybe this is why Randy doesn't like Library of Alexandria, but
Well, I mean, I think that under most circs, Andreas would have been carried to victory by the library. I still have faith in the library. It didn't work out this game, but we're dealing with a small sample size.
Yep, it's still an incredible Magic card, and it's really easy to get emotional about games of Magic, especially Vintage, when your opponent does things like turn 1 play Trinisphere, and you just feel like, whoa, what's the point? But yeah.
If you couldn't get emotional about this game, why would you play it?
Exactly, and I think it was Richard Garfield that said it's the greatest game because when you win, you feel like it's all skill, and when you lose, you can just blame it on variance. Don't we all?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the great one wins. It's a really exciting match.
So I'm not very familiar with Xerox. What cards do you predict each player to be bringing in here?
All right, good question. I think I like Balance to come in for Andreas, and is that a Dismember? I'm not seeing anything else that looks really exciting. Let me take a look at the.
I think that the basic forest is okay to bring in because Bob also has he's going to be bringing in a wasteland for library anyways. So I'm looking at basic forest and balance with a dismember in the sideboard being fine as a way to destroy Mana Gorgia Hydra, which can be difficult to remove otherwise. Because you don't want things like, notably, he's cutting a Mystical Tutor. Oh, Mystical Tutor is in his sideboard. How interesting. Yeah. That card is generally not very good because if you Mystical Tutor and then you get something and then they counter what you got, you just put yourself down cards and it's just so bad. Like, notably, I shuffled away Vampiric Tutor or bottom Vampiric Tutor against the blue matchup, even though it could have gotten a powerful card because I felt going down a card was not worth it there.
I agree, and I think you were right to sideboard it out because if you're playing against, Bob and he's going to misstep the Vamp Tutor, or you can wait till you get something and then counter what you get, so it's not really worth it.
Yeah, and I think on Bob's side,
Red Blast,
maybe Pithing Needle for the Jaces, but that doesn't seem like a real plan.
I don't think so. I think I just want maybe Lightning Bolt to try to hit a Hydra early, and then Red Blast.
Yeah, I also like the Wasteland, I think, because of you not having Library in your deck, and also Andreas' mana base can be a little shaky because he is notably playing a Bant deck, and he's heavier on the... I guess he's not that heavy on white, but his mana is not perfect.
We did see that last game, didn't we?
Imagine a Wasteland in that game would have just closed the door immediately.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So it looks like both players are somewhat agreeing, and then cards you don't need. I mean, you don't need Descender's Deliverance. We all have those in our main deck. Those cards: Chain of Vapor, Hercule's Recall, Descender's Deliverance for the Atog Lord, and they weren't very effective tonight. But you want them you just need to have them in order to beat the Workshops deck.
You do. I was telling Andreas that I really like Descender's Deliverance. First, the art of that card's amazing, and second, it cycles for a green, so it fits the theme.
And it does not get mental misstepped.
Mm-mm.
what a well designed card, right? I mean,
It really is.
cycling is just makes for such great games of Magic. I mean, you could even sometimes cycle Hollow one, although I don't know that I've ever seen a Dredge player make that play.
I have once in my life. What I really would like, though, is for them to make a channel shatter, the old Kamigawa mechanic where you can discard it from your hand. That way you can dodge spheres. You can just pay, say, a green to shatter something.
Oh, that would be great.
Well,
All right.
Andreas is
So
amazing.
this
He has
hand is
another turn one library, and Bob's going to 6, and he has a fine hand, but I feel like this is just like I felt last time. Probably going to be Andreas's game on account of a library, but I was wrong the last game, so I could be wrong this game.
and you can kind of afford to play with your life total a little bit in this matchup because generally when games are lost, it is not because of racing. Although it kind of was last game. Like I said earlier, it really still usually is about the amount of cards you draw. And Bob's deck is a little bit more aggressive. So Bob mulliganed a no land 7 into a fine 6. It has a Jace, which is very good in this matchup, and it has Preordain, Snap Preordain, has a misstep.
It's fine.
Bolt can answer another Jace or an early Mentor or Mana Gorge Hydra.
Man. So if Andreas has like landmarks or a Lotus in the top, I think he just windmill slams Jace. He has the force to back it up.
Oh, absolutely. Especially since your opponent did not lead on a red land, because oftentimes if you have a red land and a fetch, you'd want to go turn 1 fetch cast Preordain sometimes. Oh, wow. So he's going to be able to... Yeah, you can pay life, and then you can time walk and do it again. And I mean, I think you just time walk here, right? Because if you find a land, you get to snap time walk and then play Jace.
Because you know that Bob has red blasts, I think I like that play. Although it looks like he's going to take the suddenly Hydra line.
This is fine. He gets to, possibly force a removal spell.
Yeah, it's not the line I would take, but I respect it. I can't find fault for just slamming down a turn 2 Hydra and, hoping it gets there.
Yeah, Andreas feels he really needs to put the pressure on against Bob.
So I'm excited for next week because we'll get to see all those exciting new cards. I think both of these decks would have Lavinia in them if this were next week, I think.
Mm-hmm. And notably, I decided to bust out my deck with the converted mana cost being very high, including 4 5-drops and 2 6-drops. The week before Lavinia hits Magic the Gathering Online.
Right.
And for those that don't know, let me pull up this card.
Oh, I can't remember what she does. It's a blue and a white for a human legend soldier, is it?
It is a human soldier, yeah. A legendary human soldier. And it's a 2-2. Do you care if you go?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Each opponent can't cast non-creature spells with converted mana cost greater than the number of lands that player controls. And whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana is spent to cast it, counter that spell. And this just, is going to be totally changed Vintage, I think. And we're going to see so many exciting decks coming out next week on the Vintage Super League when people are busting this card out.
I think it's really, 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 really powerful.
And I believe that is Steve on next week?
I don't remember. I don't remember exactly the lineup for next week.
So let's see what's going on here in this game while we're gushing over the new Magic card.
Oh, this is actually... So Andreas can take 3 turns in a row. That's a lot of turns.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful when you have a giant mana gorging Hydra in play that's liking the spells you're casting, as well as a Sylvan Library that's drawing you extra cards. Well, at this point, you probably don't want to pay 4 more, but certainly not with those ones. Although you might have almost lethal. You can go Soul Ring, misstep my own Soul Ring.
Yeah, I think he gets to lethal. You can keep Soul Ring. No, keep Soul Ring. Don't put Soul Ring back.
Yeah, so put back the Hydra. Well, you're a mana. You can't quite. Yeah. Oh, you'd have to misstep there, misstep. Yeah, you're not quite have enough mana. Not everyone has Dark Rituals to do whatever they'd like. But he can still do this next turn.
Is it still lethal next turn? He attacks for 6. He goes to 8. So attacks for 7. Yeah, that is lethal.
Yeah, because you can just go Snapcat. You can go Soul Ring, misstep the Soul Ring, and then I guess you don't have anything to Snapcaster, but you can just still cast a Snapcaster. Yeah, so we're gonna go to game 3 here.
Oh, I'm glad we're going to game 3 because these have been some fantastic games. So I do think that it's going to be hard to justify playing a Xerox deck without Lavinia. She's just a blue and a white, right?
And notably, she is asymmetrical.
Yes, that's the big part. Back in my day, when I was your age, hate bears were symmetrical. Kind of like the card frames. It was great. Thalia makes you pay more and it makes me pay more. Galactig, I can't play things, but you can't either. Now you get Lavinia, you get Leovold. They're one
Cabal, Council of Allocation,
Campbell,
which is a
right?
card I do
Yeah,
not. I mean, look how much already without Lavinia. Look at me. I'm playing a deck that is straight blue and black. You sometimes see a splash for red for Wheel of Fortune and the like. And I'm playing a Caracas, a white land in the sideboard of my straight Dimir deck.
right, right. Well, when I first saw this card spoiled, what I posted on the Twitter was grab your Caracas because I think that's going to be the best and cleanest answer to her.
Yep, I mean, it's not counterable. The problem with cards like Chain Vapor and Fatal Push is they get misstepped by the Xerox decks.
Right.
And you just can't rely on one mana answers to troublesome permanents anymore in Vintage. So it looks like we're going into... So next week is going to be Brassman, Randy, Steven Indian, and the current Vintage World Champion, Brian Koval. What a lineup.
Man,
and you know some of those guys like to brew.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That is such a great lineup right
there. They are. Yeah, that's what, all of these lineups are so great. I mean, this week we have the newcomer, me. You have a Hall of Famer. You have, a Magic the Gathering online end boss and Andreas, and you have the ATOG Lord yourself. So just looking at all these weeks, it's so exciting. What a great show.
Absolutely. The Vintage Super League is it's just such a tremendous thing. I think, if you're out there, if you're watching it, I hope you're enjoying seeing Vintage. To me, getting a chance to tell people what a great format Vintage is, and then showing people what a great format Vintage is, I think that's the main reason that I'm here. That's the main reason that I started streaming.
It really is. It's really one of Magic's just greatest formats, and it's so great. It has a great community on Magic the Gathering online, and you get to play with all these sweet cards.
You do.
Okay, so Bob is going to keep a no-lander, but he has turn 1 Preordained with Misstep backup, looking for a land, but his hand doesn't even really do anything if he finds a land.
Oof.
Oh, no, and it looks like he bottom and found a Gush.
Ouch, that hurts. I mean, but you have to keep those hands. If you're going to play a Xerox deck, you can't ship those hands.
Yeah, I mean, I would have personally shipped this specific hand because it's not even that good if you find a Volcanic Island.
You're not so well set up to recover from mulligans.
And that's the thing is I think Bob just felt that just having a card, especially when you're on the play, you're going down to 6, you're effectively facing off against an 8-card hand. Your opponent got to, for free, cast Divination.
I think Bob was correct in keeping the hand. It's unfortunate that he didn't find a land off the Preordain, but I think this is what you sign up for when you're playing a deck like this.
And we get to see Spell Pierce on the Sol Ring here. And Spell Pierce is not a new card to Magic the Gathering. It's from Zendikar. But it is it's seeing a resurgence in Vintage right now.
Yeah, I think it hadn't seen a lot of play until Matt Sperling played it. And I think Matt Sperling, he put it in a blue-red deck that has Wasteland and heavy artifact destruction, so he can really tax opponents' mana bases.
And we see Bob taking that even a step further today, playing Daze, which, in a format full of Moxen and Dark Rituals and Black Lotuses, who would think that you could ever effectively Daze something? But the thing is, no one respects it. And the best Daze is the one they don't respect. Wow, so there's going to be a fight over Sol Ring here.
This is pretty impressive stuff. So this has to be tough. Normally, you wouldn't force of will over a Sol Ring. The fact that Andreas is pitching... Now, he's pitching a Mystical Tutor, which is sort of the worst possible card.
He just feels this,
And Bob chose to keep the Gush instead of the other Force.
He's probably just figuring he can't ever win a game when he has to pitch 2 cards, 2 for 1 himself twice. Oh, there's a Brainstorm. Wow, what a great draw.
Man. Because, at this point, that balance isn't looking so good, is it?
Yeah, balance isn't the best card to cast when your opponent has
no
lands in play.
But crack, look at a fresh 2 cards on Preordain, that's going to feel good.
Yeah, you get to find another land here, Time Walk, Snap Time Walk, and You just kind of run away from this game while your opponent stumbles on mana, and that is the problem with these Turbo Xerox decks is
Exactly.
they don't play very many lands, so they can cascade once they get going, but sometimes they can't. Oh, and there's the red source right in time.
Oh man.
So Bob might still be in this game.
Well, you could Red Blast the Hydra. You might not want to.
Oh, there's the land off the top. I mean, he did preordain, so we could kind of see that coming.
You must have set this all up. So much of this game is going to hinge on if Bob. Oh, he time walked.
Oh, maybe he has another land on top and he can Hydra plus Spell Pierce.
Ooh.
That would be so powerful.
Either, right? You only look at 2.
Oh, so he wouldn't know the next card. Yeah, it's not Serum Visions.
So I'm a little surprised because the value of your time walk goes way up as soon as you get your hands on a Mana Gorge Hydra. But I guess he can snap it back.
Yeah, I think he's just feeling he can snap it back, and that this Hydra is so important right now.
Oh wow! Gosh! Oh my gosh!
A very powerful, very restricted card that whole books have been written about.
Literally. I'm so glad that they restricted, gosh. I'm so glad that Wizards of the Coast finally decided, not for the first time, but for the second time, to restrict this horrible abomination of a Magic card. Coming soon to a book near you.
There is a format you're allowed to play 4 of, though. If you play in Pauper, and you get to play all these powerful restricted cards as 4 ofs.
I built a Pauper deck. I've played 3 matches of real-life Pauper in my life. But I did that mostly because I wanted a deck that is not Vintage or Legacy legal. So I built one with multiple Gushes, Brainstorms, and Ponders.
What a great time to get to play a deck that's not Vintage or Legacy legal.
Right.
And there's going to be a Pauper Pro Tour or Mythic Championship qualifier at Magic Fest Los Angeles. There will be a Magic Championship qualifier playing Pauper. So if you're into Pauper, you can go Saturday and play on the Pauper and play on the highest level of Magic the Gathering.
So Magic Fests are what they used to call Grand Prix, and now they're Magic Fests. What tournament are they going to have a Magic Fest that's Pauper?
So they're going to have a qualifier for what used to be the professional tour that is Pauper. But it will not. The professional tour will not be Pauper.
Okay,
that's the Mythic Championship, I believe, is the name of it.
Mythic
I might be getting the name wrong. I'm certainly not a player that is trying to qualify for those things. I'm playing old cards on Magic the Gathering Online, but
I am also not. So there's in what would be a PTQ at a Grand Prix in Pauper, but now it's a Mythic qualifier for a Magic Fest.
Yes. Well, okay. No. It's a Mythic Championship qualifier at a Magic Fest for the Mythic Championship, I believe.
What format is the Mythic Championship?
That is usually standard and limited because it's what used to be the professional tour. Okay, so back to the game here. While us eternal players try to figure out lingo, we have Bob casting Gush, and suddenly he might be back in this game, but he doesn't have a good way to remove this Mana Gorge Hydra.
We can help the audience understand what's going on with all the latest Magic things. So interestingly, Andreas did not deign to counter the Young Pyromancer. Young Pyromancers are the sorts of things that can get out of hand. Wow. Now, earlier, we weren't so excited about balance, were we? Now, balance is exactly the sort of thing you need to do to get rid of an arbitrary number of evil Young Pyromancer tokens.
Yeah, so he's gonna go ahead and keep that. He might fetch it away. He might feel like he can just trample over with this 5/5 Mana Gorge Hydra. I mean, I don't know that Bob can make enough tokens in time to defeat this Mana Gorge Hydra, which after this turn is already going to be a 6/6, and that's if Bob doesn't cast any spells. So you mentioned earlier about how I think that this card kind of gives you an edge in the Xerox mirrors because it's so large and they just don't have an effective way to deal with a threat like this. They're more focused on going wide. They're token strategies. They're aiming to cast a lot of spells, but Mana Gorge Hydra goes tall.
Right, you're right. Most of the Xerox decks are interested in going wide. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so I do think that, plus Sylvan Library is a pretty big card in this match.
Yeah, I mean, he got to cast it on turn 1, I believe, and it just provides powerful. Or that was last game. Was it? No,
that was last game, right? Or just sort of took over, I think.
And he paid a lot of life for it, but he has Sylvan Library again, and this is really showing off showcasing the green splash. And when you have these dual lands and these fetch lands, you can afford to play many different sorts of colors, which can be a problem when Workshops is in the format because they'll punish you for that. And that's what you get all these interesting dynamics where it's like, do I want to pull ahead in the mirror? Do I want to have enough graveyard hate cards? Do I want to defeat shops?
And Brian Kelly built Sylvan Mentor to tear apart other Mentor decks.
Yep. Vintage Super League competitor, vintage world champion Brian Kelly.
Exactly. Great guy too. Just incredibly nice.
So nice. I'm sure that we will see some very exciting brews from him. He's brought us things like Snake Still. You never know what he's going to oath into. Maybe it'll be a 7/7 flying life-linking demon, and maybe it'll be a 3/3 elf advisor. So
exactly,
anything could be under that oath when it's Brian Kelly.
It could even be a boat. I'm sure he could oath into a pirate ship at some point.
I wouldn't be surprised. He would have some good reason for it. So we're gonna see a Pyroblast on Snapcaster Mage here. I don't know how Bob is gonna deal with this Managorge Hydra. Because having trample, it just tramples over the tokens.
You're absolutely right. It has trample. I don't think Bob has anything in his deck that deals with it.
Yeah, and I know Andreas before the match, he mentioned that Magic the Gathering Online player named Jose Ortiz, who while testing for this event was one of my few losses I had. So great Magic player. He was playing a list like this and defeated Andreas. And we get a lot of great technology from the Magic the Gathering Online for Vintage Moto. Like I was taught by a great Magic Storm player named Gutter Shark, and you just get all these great community, great ways to meet people, and
you're so
now
right.
We're playing Magic the Gathering Online in front of thousands of people.
You're so right. One of the things that I find to be such an enjoyable experience is I love getting absolutely clobbered by some absurd card that I never in a million years would have thought of. I love that feeling. I like nothing more than the feeling of, man, that was brutal and devastating. I have to try this out.
Yes, I have a good one after this, but looks like so Andres made a great play of leaving balance on top of his deck with the fetch land. He got to decide if he wanted it or not. So if Young Pyromancer just went complete ballistic this turn and made 10 tokens with a time lock, Andreas could go play balance with pitching Jace back up, and then attack with Managorge Hydra for almost certainly lethal. And so he decided to keep it on top of his library, and it's still, I think it's lethal here, right?
It should be, even if the only way balance doesn't resolve. So even if balance gets countered, it still is even. And if balance doesn't get countered, if it resolves, then it's Managorge Hydra versus the world. And by I mean one person who really loves Chandra. If you looked closely at the art in Young Pyromancer, he's wearing like a Chandra medallion.
How could you not love Chandra, though?
That's just fair.
Very powerful. Chandra Torch of Defiance sees vintage play.
There it is. Look, you can see her.
Yes. A notable card that I had never had cast against me before that blew me out was Vintage Champs. I went turn 1, Time Twister, play out 5 Moxen. Rich draws for his turn. We're playing what is effectively a win-in almost for top 8 of the Vintage Championships. And he goes, powder keg all your Moxen away. And I have a Tolarian Academy play, and I just look at him dumbfounded. I've lost the game. And that's a great example of a card I could never saw it coming.
You were a very good sport about that.
Well, how could you be upset when someone plays this amazing old bordered card and destroys all your Moxen? It's what makes Vintage great. I can never be upset playing this format because if anything's ever happening, you can guarantee it's going to be something sweet.
So well said, Cyrus. That was so well said.
So I think we have to battle now.
Ooh, all right.
And that's it's going to be an interesting matchup. I do not have any graveyard hate, but and you have a lot of Storm hate. Well, but it's going to be 2 powerful evil wizards dueling off.
Absolutely.
Because even on this day, you are an evil wizard.
Sometimes, you're an evil wizard. Sometimes you're a mongoose. Sometimes you're a delver. Today, we can be evil wizards. It's all right.
Yes, zombie lords would say. Cool. So we're going to go ahead and cut some ads now and tune in to Rich and I playing our match.